Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Helen Liu, and I am the Programming and Partnerships Manager at Cary Library. Thank you for joining us for tonight's program, The Chinese American Experience, Navigating Today's World. This program will be recorded and will be posted to the library's YouTube channel. The panelists have been asked to reflect on several questions. Each question will be posted to chat prior to being answered. Please submit any additional questions to Q&A. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to thank the Cary Library Foundation, whose support enables us to bring programs like tonight's event to you. This program is made possible by Cary Library in partnership with the Chinese American Association. Wei Ding will be your host and moderator for tonight's program and will introduce our panel. Wei is a professor of computer science at UMass Boston, a board member of the Cary Library Foundation, and the Cultural Committee co-chair of Chinese American Association of Lexington. Wei, welcome. I am now going to hand the evening off to you to host and introduce our panelists.
Thank you, Helen. Good evening. I would love to thank Helen and the Cary Library for partnering with C.A.A.L to design and implement this panel discussion. I'm pleased to introduce our multi-generational panel whose ages range from 15 to 87.7. So first, I would like to introduce Anina Wang.
Hello, everyone.
Anina Wang has lived in the Boston area since 2007 and moved to Lexington in 2015. Volunteering is her passion. She is a real estate agent by profession. She is also the founder of Lexington Chinese Storytime and co-founder of Boston High School Education 501c3. Next, I would like to have our dear panelist, Jieying Jenny Yao.
Good evening, everyone.
Jenny Yao came to the States in 1988 and moved to Lexington since 2006. She loves children, and now she is one of the Mandarin teachers in LHS. She has been volunteering and teaching for Newton Chinese Language School for over 22 years. Used to be the PTO board member for Bridge School. Miss Jenny Yao loves our town and community. Next, we have our beloved Larry Ho.
Oh, hi, everyone.
So Larry Ho has lived in the US since 1950, a total of 71 years, and feels assimilated not in the sense of being a melting pot, but rather as one ingredient in a delicious stew, retaining individual characteristics but contributing to a multiracial, harmonious community. And next, we have our dear Sophia Ho. So Sophia Ho, she is so well known in our community. Sophia is a professional volunteer. She feels that the payment she receives is not money, but much more rewarding and meaningful. And next, we have our young panelist, David Zhao.
Hello, everyone.
David Zhao is an 11th grader at Lexington, and he is a computer programmer and volleyball player. David has lived in Lexington for 6 years already, and from his childhood to now, Lexington has been a good town to grow up in with a close community and people. And next, we have our beautiful panelist, Phoebe Tian.
Hi, everyone.
Phoebe Tian is an 11th grader at Lexington High School. She has lived in Lexington for 5 years. She loves music and using music to speak up. She loves Lexington, and his town will forever be special in her heart for its unique people, support, and growth that she has gained here. And next, we have our panelist, Mr. Tie Xu.
Hello, everyone.
Tie Xu is a computer engineer. He has lived in America since 2000 and lived in Lexington since 2009. Moving from place to place all his life, Lexington is the place he lived the longest. And then next we have our dear panelist, Emma Tingfang.
Hi, everyone.
Emma feels her life is at a point where the total years since she came to this country are now equal to the years prior to her move from China. She is a board member of LHS-PTO, founding board member of New Legacy Culture Center and New England Chinese American Alliance. And then we save the most beloved panelist, Hong Bin Wang, as the last one to introduce.
Good evening, everyone.
Hong Bin came to the US 30 years ago and has been living in Lexington for more than 23 years. He loves our neighborhood, our community, and our town. Okay, so it's really glad to see all the audience here. Now let's move on the first question to our panel. So the first question we have here is, I'm going to copy the question into the chat. So then we're going to go ahead to ask the panelists to answer the first question. In total, we have 6 questions. So we often read and watch movies to gain an appreciation of experiences, races, cultures, and religions that are not our own. So I would like to ask our panelists, is there a book, a movie, or video game, or piece of music that you would recommend that captures what is meant to Chinese? So Ms. Jenny Yao.
Hi, thank you, Wei. Well, it's a good question. Just like no single Hollywood movie can capture all of America, it is hard to find one movie to capture what it means to be Chinese. As a Mandarin teacher, I usually show some movie clips or excerpts in my classroom for my students to help them learn both cultural and modern society. But for the following 2 movies, I would usually find time and share the entire movie with the class, and of course, with some worksheets. The first movie I would recommend is called Our Shining Days, 闪光少女. It is about a music high school and its students, how they deal with the challenge of keeping their choice of traditional music instruments and following the trends of Western style. Another good movie for my teenager students is called Yesterday Once More, 谁的青春不迷茫? It is about 高考, about students' choice, etc. Both good family movie choice with English subtitles, so the entire family can sit down, watch, and talk about it. Another documentary I would like to recommend to general audience is China from Above, 鸟看中国. It comes in 2 parts. It's from the National Geographic Channel. The living past and the future is now. And of course, it's in English. You can all find these in YouTube. So David, you're 11th grader. So what would you recommend? So that might help me to understand my students better.
Yeah, so first of all, I would like to say what I think it means to be Chinese is that you're hardworking, you are ambitious, and you always try to get to the #1 spot. And I think there's a movie I watched last year that really captures what it means to be Chinese. And it's called Leap, which follows the Chinese women's volleyball team in the 1980s and 2000s, as they had many successes and failures as they worked hard to try to win the Olympics in those years. And volleyball in China is a very big deal, especially the women's national team. And whenever they have a big competition or event like the Olympics, everyone in China watches the event on TV. And so I'll give a quick summary of the movie. And the movie starts with the volleyball team practicing in the facility, and you can see them working hard, and you can see that there are red spots and bruises on their skins, and they're working really hard to try to win the Olympics. And the coaches are not giving them any breaks because they know that if the harder they work, if they work harder than the other teams, they'll succeed. And even though the volleyball players are bruised and red and want to stop, their ambition is what leads them to fight through the pain, as they want to work harder than the other teams. And another aspect of the Chinese is also shown through the movie, where they have to sacrifice their time for their family, or it's time to do stuff that they enjoy for their one goal, to win the Olympics. And the rest of the movie, they have a lot of more success and failure, and eventually they go on to go to the Olympics and eventually win the Olympics. And This is a great watch and I would recommend it because it's a great example of the Chinese spirit.
Wonderful. What a great answer from the teacher and the student. And actually, that brings to our second question, because the books and movies recommended by both panelists are closely related to Chinese culture. So my second question to the panel is, what are the best parts of Chinese culture? What makes you proud to be Chinese? How have your cultural differences empowered you to become the person you are today? If you could give one piece of advice to a fellow Asian Americans, what would that be? So I would like to ask, okay, our most senior panelist and also our young panelists, Sophia, Larry, and Alina, to answer this question.
Should I start?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Now, I came to this country at a relatively young age. I was a teenager, and young people adapt and learn very fast. So I brought the old Chinese values with me. To quote what John just said, parents tell you to do your best and to be number one. But they also taught me to work hard and be thrifty, don't waste time, all these old Chinese traditions. But since I came as a young person, I very quickly adapted to the new culture of the United States. You speak up when you are right. You should be humble, but you mustn't make little of yourself. And also my hero, Dr. Martin Luther King, and he said many famous words. And one thing I really like what he said is, life's most urgent and important question is, what are you doing for others? So I followed his footsteps and speak up, register to vote. If you don't speak, people cannot hear you. And so I find this mixture of old and new culture really helped me.
And Larry, what do you think? I really like the answer provided by Sophia.
Hi. Yes. The Chinese culture and the American culture are oftentimes, in fact, 180 degrees different. And that's something we should be aware of. Chinese culture tends to be more family-oriented and realize one's place in a group, while American culture emphasizes individualism and social responsibility. And those two things are very different. And as the way you said earlier, you don't have to be a melting pot, become 100% American. You should be like an ingredient in a delicious stew and retaining your characteristic, but contribute to a multiracial, harmonious society. So that's something I think important. We should realize that while we assimilate to the American culture and so forth, we can still retain our own spirit, but don't have the mentality that you're still living in China and living in Chinatown. You can behave always like a Chinese and not pay attention to the Western culture and habits and traditions. So that would be my view.
As a younger generation, in my opinion, the best part of Chinese culture is balance, the harmony of human beings and the universe, the balance of personal ethics and social relationships, the balance of family and work, the balance of individual and groups, also the balance in what we are doing and the way we do it. One of the ancient 4 books, The Great Learning says, who wishes to make the world better must first make one's own country better. And who wishes to make one's own country better must first operate one's family well. And who wishes to operate one's family well must first manage oneself well. So it's a balance. It's dynamic balance is everywhere in the universe. It teaches me the correct order of doing things and also the principles and the steps I should follow.
Great. So, Larry, could you give one piece of advice to the fellow Asian American? If you could give one piece of advice. So as the most senior panelist, 87.7, according to your precise calculation, 87.7 years old. Okay.
Yes, I think I already said that. That is, you should try to integrate into the Western culture in order to be successfully adapt to living in America. Don't behave as if you're still living in Chinatown. You know, we don't have French town, German town, or even Indian town, which is a very large Asian population in the United States. But we have Chinatown. And that's, I think, if you want to successfully adapt to the American life, you should not try to behave as if you're still living in China.
Yes, I like Larry's answer very much. So then let's move on to question 3, which is, in my opinion, is a pretty hard question. So for the question 3, what is the hardest part about being Asian American today? Would you have answered that question differently before the pandemic and everything that has taken place between then and now? Do you think you could fit into any of the stereotypical categories that are associated with being Chinese? How did you overcome that perception? Hongbin, do you want to start?
Sure. Thank you, Wei. So I've been living in Lexington for over 20 years. In my past experience, I haven't noticed a lot of hardship in day-to-day life. My 2 daughters went to the Lexington public school, and they have enjoyed it. Although, you know, Lexington school is very competitive academically, which is a totally different matter. But that being said, the hardest part for me is how to understand more about other cultures and how to commingle with neighbors and communities. So in my experience, there's no good way other than have an open mind and just do it. The practice makes perfect. COVID, well, to the second part of the question, the COVID does bring visible changes, in my opinion. This does not mean that COVID caused all the issues. It may simply have magnified the existing issues. And also, you can definitely see differences in different parts of the country. So Lexington is a very unique town, has a lot of diversity and a very welcoming community. But recently, you know, we have been hearing a lot more violence targeting Asian Americans in Chicago, New York City, Philadelphia, for example. So this really hurts in that Asian Americans are being treated unfairly despite the vast contribution over the years.
This is such a heavy topic. So I saw Jenny is nodding. Jenny?
Well, for me, I've been living in this country for over 33 years and in our town since 2006. Personally, I haven't noticed much difference before the pandemic or after, simply because I mostly stay home and work in school without going around. But I have some cute stories to share. I was once, well, like many moms, once a baseball mom, a swimming mom, tennis mom, who always went around town cheering for our children and trying to help out with anything I could do for the kids and the team. Even with a demanding full-time job, I managed to volunteer at our kids' school and town regularly. So I got to know quite a few moms over many years, and it's always pleasant chatting about our kids' team, performance, scores, and our school issues, etc. So many years ago, when I decided to change my career path and became a teacher, I was happy to share with some moms, and they cheered for me and were happy for my new career choice, especially working for our own high school. And one day, one mom chatted with me and said, "So Jenny, great to hear you're going to work for LHS. What are you going to do? Work in the kitchen?" I was smiling and said, "Aha, I wish I could be the chef. I actually got 2 licenses, one for world language and the other for mathematics." "Oh, blah, 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 blah." Well, I call these cute questions, no hard feelings. People are just curious, and I just answer honestly and with a little touch of humor. And I'm always happy to let people know more about me. That is it. And I wouldn't take to a certain extent, rather, I take it lightly as a good opportunity to get to talk more. And of course, now my neighbors all know more about me.
So when I think about this hardest part of being Asian American, so somehow I'm not thinking about myself or as the first generation of the Asian American. I think it's our choice to come here, and like a lot of difficulty, we're very well prepared, and I think and a lot of difficulty is not as an Asian American, as a newcomer, you have a lot of difficulty. So when I think about this question, I more think about our second generation, our son and daughters. And do they have this identity problem? Are they going to like struggle about their identity when they grow up? That is, I think more about that. So I still remember like several years ago when my son and I we were watching a movie at home, Interstellar. There's you may remember there was a black astronaut in that movie, and he's, I think, in the middle of the movie, about half or over half, he made some like stupid mistake and cost his life. And my son told me that like black guys usually die first in the movie, and it's the same for Asian. So that made me very very sad. And so maybe what he said is not true, but I'm shocked that he got this impression. And there's some difficulty that I didn't experience when I was his age. He was only like 9 years old when we were watching that movie. And so I think there's something they're going to deal with, and they're going to figure out when they grow up how they adapt to this identity. But what I'm going to say is I'm not going to paint a dark picture of his environment. Actually, he's pretty happy, and he has friends. He feels welcome in this. He grew up here, and he feels welcome in his school and his friends. Like he has white friends, Latino friends, and Asian friends, of course. So I hope that my worry is simply a worry. It's not going to have big impact to his life. Yeah.
And Hongbin, you have been the town meeting member for many years. So did you get any concerns on the stereotypical, categories for Asian American?
Yes, yeah, definitely. So for example, certainly I fit in some of the stereotypes, right? So I'm an engineer, and if you go to a Chinese party, in my generation, you'd mostly find people in a few professions like engineers, scientists, doctors, for example. That's about it. And we talk to other people, what do you do? Oh, I'm an engineer. What do you do? I'm a scientist. So definitely, so there's a few, so it is not diverse enough in our professions. However, the stereotypes changes over time. So if you read the interior Chinatown, you hear a lot about Kung Fu restaurant, that type of thing. So that's one kind of stereotypes, right? So Jenny actually gave a very good example, something like, oh, okay, so people will think, oh, you are of certain professions, but this is so this is changing. So our later generations have engineers, scientists, and more recently, we have started to see more Chinese American You have entrepreneurs starting businesses, and more participating in democracy at local, state, and federal level. So you have seen like Michelle Wu, Andrew Yang, and C.A.A.L has done a great job, right, in the recent years promoting the participation in the local government. So me, as a matter of fact, was one of them, right? Sophia Ho, I remember Sophia Ho just trusted me, so okay, encouraged me to say, okay, I'll go to a town meeting and learn and contribute. So that's what I did. So this is a very, so I have enjoyed a lot and have learned a lot. It's an eye-opening experience for sure. So we have started to see like more diversity in the Chinese community, and especially in the younger generation trying out different things. I think this is something we need to embrace it.
Okay, great. So Emma, you have been such a warm-hearted person and helped the community from so many different perspectives. So I would like you to conclude the answer to the overall question for question 3.
Well, I would just say that I agree whatever everyone just said. It's quite a challenge for us, and I think mostly also maybe for the next generation to really try to be in a position that they feel really comfortable sometimes. But hopefully it's not going to be an ongoing struggle. And that's what we are working hard to try to help with. And then I would like also to chime in on Hongbin's point on the first question when he mentioned about, I think a lot of us also heard over the past year that reports of bias incidents and hate crimes against the AAPI individuals have increased all across this nation, and xenophobia and the rise of misinformation about the coronavirus have led to reports of harassment on public transportation, denial of hotel reservations, verbal harassment, and physical attacks. These are all very concerning, and I was even shocked to learn the story of a 5th grader from as close as Belmont, our neighbor town, who was verbally abused, assaulted in public simply due to his Asian descent. So I feel like there's probably something there that still could be done to improve, even though I think at least in Lexington, it's maybe already as good as it could be. So with that, I give this back to you, Wei.
Sure. So you talk about the horrible story happened in Belmont, right? So would you like to tell us about your experience living in Lexington, and how long have you lived here, and how do you like it?
Oh, yeah, sure. That's so much more pleasant of a story. I moved to Lexington in 2009 at the beginning, just like everyone else, for its rich history, great school system. And over the years, I became attracted by its diversity, open-mindedness, and the loving community. Well, I've been building personal connections through working relationships as a broker and interactions with neighbors and people at various local nonprofits through my volunteering experience, such as the school PTO, PTAs, C.A.A.L, and New Legacy Cultural Center, the one that I'm pretty much mainly focusing on nowadays, LCE, Lex Media, Community Coalition, and so on. The more I get involved in the community, the deeper the love and appreciation becomes for the town and the amazing people here. I think, if anything, the pandemic in particular brought everyone even closer in this town through, the PPE drive, COVID relief projects, and all kinds of supporting programs from the local government and organizations. I have personally involved in some of the projects which I call once of a lifetime experience, and certainly unforgettable. With everyone's effort, I have no doubt that Lexington would simply get better and better from here as we all collaborate and move along together. Thank you.
Thank you. So Tie, I saw you nodding as well.
Oh yeah, so yeah, Emma said pretty much. I have the same feeling as her, like to this Lexington. So I moved here in 2009, and my son went to first elementary school, the Bowman school, the class school, and now in high school. And my family living here, I think all my experience are positive. We like this town, and we feel very welcomed and very comfortable here. And the school, the street, and the shops, we never feel like anything like discrimination or things like that. Nothing about that. And so these days when you're driving around, you see a lot of like the Black Lives Matter, this Stop Asian Hate sign in the front yard. And a friend joking with me like the other day said, "Oh, that's the only thing they need to do, like put the signs there." So it's I see it positively. It's kind of I see it from good side. And actually, it's not bad thing. And it means that we don't have such concern here. We don't have such problem here. And all the signs, the Black Lives Matter, all these signs, I see it as good people show goodwill. So I feel very safe and very comfortable. Even the only thing they need to do is to put a sign there. So I like this town.
Yeah, me too. I love Lexington. So that now it's time for me to ask our youngest panelist, David Zhao and Phoebe Tian. So now the question we have here is, you have had an opportunity to discuss the book of Interior Chinatown in class, and you have met the author. Were there any moments during those conversations that stood out to you, either in a positive or negative way? And also another question is a little bit tricky because was it difficult to have your culture be the focus of a school-wide read?
Yeah, so I'll answer the first one. So I think there's a moment that stood out to me when I was watching one of his talks, and he was talking about growing up as an Asian American in America. And back then, 30 years ago, the TV shows and movies he watched did not have many Asians in them. And the few Asians that were in the movies were either a restaurant worker or kung fu master. And he says that the invisibility of the Asians in those movies and TV shows really distorted his view of the US, and it made him think that he was not actually part of the US, and that Asians were like almost foreigners, even though they were part of America. And I feel like it connects to Interior Chinatown, where Willis Wu, he wants to become a kung fu master because it's the highest role that an Asian can have, that the stereotypes lead to only kung fu masters in movies. And his only goal is to become a kung fu master. And it shows the impact of pop culture and media on the US and how it has a huge effect on stereotypes and jobs and roles. But now I think there is a better quality and quantity of roles for Asians in America. And there was a movie that released a few months ago called Shang-Chi, which stars an Asian American actor, and it's an improvement.
Thank you, David. So Phoebe, you have done an amazing job to help the community. So do you want to share about your opinion about this question?
Yeah, so I'll answer the second part of the question. So talking about my culture, our culture in our school was definitely a very unique experience because first, we've never really done that before. And it was definitely difficult in the beginning because, as I said, it's and new experience, though I felt more happy than feeling uncomfortable, because talking about this, it's something that we should have done a long time ago. And it's not only our culture, the Chinese American culture, it's diversifying the narratives of all different cultures, because Lexington is such a diverse town that we really should value that aspect of our town. Talking about things is the first step to change, because we want to use peace to fight violence, not violence to fight violence. Change definitely doesn't come easily. Every little effort that we all work towards to break that century-old racism is worth it. And overall, I loved talking about my culture in my school, and I definitely think we should do more of that.
Okay. Very interesting and honest answer. I like this. And then let's move on to the last question for today's panel. Then we're going to open the FAQ session. So I know both Sophia and Phoebe has been quite involved with the Chinese American history, the involvement into our curriculum. So the last question is, Chinese Americans have been fundamental to the history of the United States, but their many contributions are only now being introduced into our curriculum. So what individual contribution has inspired you the most? Sophia, please.
Yes, there's so many. We start to study American history. We all know that the old times, the Chinese laborers who helped build the transcontinental railroad. But there's many more people who contribute to this country. For instance, in arts and music, there's Yo-Yo Ma, there's I.M. Pei, and opera singers, actors, and in other fields in politics, you know, our own Michelle Wu, and before that, Andrew Yang, and S.B. Wu was the first Chinese American elected to be the lieutenant governor of Delaware. So there are a lot of people of Chinese heritage has contributed to their adopted countries. But there's, I think, most people do not know the contributions of 20,000 Chinese Americans who participated in the Second World War. They sacrificed their lives and they became General Chanel's Flying Tigers. And but that people don't hear about it. So our friend, the first Chinese American to be made the 2-star Major General in the Army, William Chen, and he told us what the Chinese Americans did. And he is trying very hard, working continuously to get our Congress to recognize these contributions of Chinese veterans. And that, I don't know if you can read that in history books. That's just only one thing. I'm sure there are many others that we do not know or not aware of. And so I would like to see the history books written to be more inclusive.
Okay. Sophia, thank you for your answer. And then Phoebe, I know you just finished one great concert, AAPI concert, right? So would you like to talk about your answer to this question?
Yeah. So first, I agree with Ms. Ho, and all the people that she mentioned are amazing people that definitely inspired me throughout my life. For me, I draw inspiration from those that Ms. Ho mentioned, who have made history, and also people who are making history right now. And some Asian American artists like Nikki, who are breaking the music industry norms, and also our first Asian American woman mayor, Michelle Wu. I even had the honor of volunteering and helping her campaign. I wanted to focus on why we should be including Asian American history in our history curriculums, because that was also what the concert that 20 LHS students organized was about. And so I think that we need to include Asian American history because we, Chinese Americans, Asian Americans, were a part of this country, our country, from the very beginning. And we built the railroads, we've bled and fought for the wars. So why shouldn't we be included in the history, right? We are looking towards a brighter side right now, as many curriculums like the Lexington High School, but also in the US is working towards that goal. But there is definitely still a lot to get done, yeah.
Okay, I'm so touched. So with that, we finish all the 6 questions I have designed for the panel. Now we open the Q&A session, and I'm going to ask my dear partner, Helen, to moderate the FAQ session.
Thank you, Wei. So we're going to go right into the questions. Have you noticed the change of Chinese American social status over the years? What are the changes? How are the changes going to impact the future Chinese Americans? Who would like to answer that question?
I can say a little bit. I think that's a very broad question. The one thing I can see the changes is that we have more like Chinese American here in Metro Boston or in and also in this Lexington. So when I remember, like when I moved here in 2009, and we are the only Chinese family, Chinese American family on this street. Right now we have 3 from mainland China and 1 from Hong Kong, and the other one, the wife is Chinese. So there's a lot of increase in this 12 years. I would say I'm confident like we bring like positive things to this community. First, we are good citizens. I believe that we respect neighbor, respect this convention, this tradition, and respect everything in this town, and try to help. And I think a lot of people like Hongbin and the way they participate in this town meeting, try to participate, help, try to contribute to this community, to this public life. And I believe we actually do some contribution to this community. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Tieshu.
If I may add to that,
of
I
course.
think, so I would like to maybe change the question a little bit, right? So he's talking about social status. I would like to change to maybe like influence, right? So I think that's more important. That's maybe related to the status, as a matter of fact. So with the what previously we asked about is stereotype kind of things. So that's a changing thing. And with more Chinese Americans branching into different areas and excelling in those, it is shaping our image and increase our influences in different areas. And Chinese Americans has made greater contributions and influences in a more diverse field these days. I think which in turn, right, help improving the social status, if you will. Also, I think in recent years, I've seen Chinese Americans are becoming more vocal. You have more people stand up and make yourself heard. So that is very, very important. So this is important for us, and also will great benefit the future generations of Chinese Americans.
Can I add another somewhat comical story about not much about discrimination, but about the pre-civil rights days.
Oh, 1 second, Larry, you're muted.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now you can hear me.
Yes.
Yeah. As some of you know, I finished my study at Harvard and stayed on as junior faculty. Now, junior faculty, when you come up for this is pre-civil rights days, in the early 60s. When they come up for promotion to tenure, it's usually a very rigorous process. You're compared with all the best in the world. And you have no guarantee that you will get promoted to tenure. But when you are sort of welcome to the permanent member of the Harvard faculty, and the second in command at Harvard, who is the Dean of Arts and Science, will usually call in, congratulate you, and welcome you, so forth. So when I was survived the promotion process in the early 60s, I was called to meet with his second in command. And this all ceremonial process, not very, very pleasant. So I went in and Dean welcomed me, and his first sentence was, "Oh, what can I do for the Chinese Student Club?" And because I was fairly young in early 60s and very young looking, so this was pre-civil rights days. He couldn't imagine such a young looking person would have promoted to tenure in Harvard faculty. And I was a little bit embarrassed to explain that I came here because he asked me to come and for the purpose. And he also got very embarrassed. And of course, we smoothed the thing over and he pat me on the shoulder and welcomed me and so forth. And I stayed on at Harvard for the rest of my life, my only job after I finished studying. But looking back, of course, somewhat comical, but in the pre-civil rights days, it's just, he cannot imagine somebody so young looking was made a tenure faculty at Harvard. And I later on, of course, stayed for 40 years, my only job in life after finishing study. So looking back, it's somewhat comical. It's not really a problem of discrimination, but it's just he couldn't imagine at that time that something like this happened.
Thank you, Larry. We're going to move on to the next question. As first-generation Chinese Americans, what struggles do you have in taking care of your elders, and helping them adapt to the American culture? What advice do you have for young immigrants from China that are mostly only children? Do you have resources in the Boston area that you would recommend?
I will try to answer that. I can only refer to the situations in Lexington. We have some senior housings there, and the seniors, they came, but do not really speak that much English. So what I thought in the beginning is how to help them to be more in contact with the outside people, with others in Lexington. So I went there and volunteered to teach them English. And God bless them. Even though they're in their 70s, 80s, they still came. They want to learn English slowly, but at least they try. So this is only one aspect of what one can do.
Thank you.
And also, I would like to say we do have a 老人群, Lexington 老人群. So if you're interested, I can add you into our 老人群 WeChat group. So in that group, you actually get lots of practical advice for you to get help to make you senior parents have a better life in Boston and also in Lexington. So I feel, because I stay in the United States for 4 different cities, I feel Lexington is the place that actually treated seniors the best. And my parents actually learned English from Sophia. So you're excellent English teacher. And then C.A.A.L also had the youth team to teach senior, Chinese people English. So please contact me.
Well, I do have an advice for immigrants like us. Register to vote. David and Tina, as soon as you turn 18, go and register. If you do not register, our government is not working for you. They cannot hear you. You don't have a voice. And voting is our privilege, but it is also our duty. Don't complain if things don't go your way, because why don't you vote? You did not say anything, then I cannot do what you want me to do. Another, not a mistake, misinformation concept is, oh, I'll vote for who wants to be the president and federal election, but local, no, I don't want to bother. In fact, Lexington's town every year annual meeting, there are only very low percentage of people go to vote. But actually, it's our local election that may concern your daily life more. So don't say, I want whom to be the president, but you want to participate in our local government as well.
Thank you, Sophia. As different generations of Chinese Americans, what can you and your generation do to change the stereotypes of Chinese Americans?
I'd like to take this question on a little bit, and if I sound offending, please excuse me. But I believe whoever asked this question, I don't think you want to hear my answer, because you assume this is an issue with us, right? Like, what can we do, or our generation can do? And thinking about the example of Ya Lao Shi, right, Jenny's, what can she do? People assumed that she works at a cafeteria, or she's already got her, certificate or diploma in order for her to be qualified to be the teacher, and she's becoming a teacher. She's she is legitimate, but people think she's not. So in that front, I don't know what we can do, but I do admit there are things that we could do, but I think it's both-sided. Both of us should have like an open mind and be willing to think in other people's shoes. And from my understanding, I think education is very important. And it's not like just going to school, just the knowledge part of it, but also be open and willing to understand certain differences, the way people behave the way they are, just because they're different life experiences, or they coming from different places, doesn't mean sometimes, they meant to do something that they appear to be. I think that takes a lot of mutual understanding and willingness to bear with each other, I guess. So if we have been any way offending, I think sorry, but I think the stereotype isn't just a one-way thing, and we couldn't force anyone else to do whatever they don't want to, but I think we can at least do as much as we can do, which I will also be a advocate, and also helping facilitate the communication and mutual learning. And that's also a big, I think, goal of New Legacy and C.A.A.L as well. Thank you.
I would like to. I'm sorry, Sophia. You go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I think more involvement in the community is very important. For our generation, we are influenced a lot by globalization. I mean, not us, the Chinese American, but the people in my generation all over the world. We're not afraid of anything. And we come here and we feel we are part of the community. We are willing to participate and contribute. We are here not just to find ourselves, but to bring great things to this community and create ourselves. So I'm very confident, and I think we should involve more in the community. And when people see we are everywhere and we are doing the volunteer work, and they see us everywhere, and I don't think it's a problem. And as I said, our generation all over the world, they are influenced a lot by.
Please leave your message after the tone.
Okay, thank you.
Sophia, did you want to comment?
Well, just a little explanation, because when Jenny was asked, do you work in the kitchen? Please don't take it too hard, because while my children were at Estabrook, my friend, another mother, she worked in school called Mother's Hours. You only work till 3 o'clock, so you can go home, wait for your children to come home. And another neighbor was a crossing guard, because they only want to work certain hours. So I don't think they meant something bad. It's many mothers do work in the kitchen so that they can be home for the children. Not a full-time job.
That's true. Great, thank you. Let's see. What major misconceptions do you think exist about your culture?
Chinese are smart.
And are good at math. My kids are not.
Me neither.
Every Chinese know how to do kung fu.
Can I add just a short note on that question? No, this is a joke that goes, which is would be considered politically incorrect nowadays. But back several decades ago, even the Chinese tell among themselves. This is a story about a family moved into a suburban area, and the neighbor start talking to the housewife, says, asking, is your husband own laundry? No. Does your husband work in the restaurant? No. Then here's the punchline, or your husband must be a PhD, which says something about the wave of Chinese immigrants, in the recent years, let's say, after the opening up of the immigration quota in 1965 due to Senator Kennedy. Most of the Chinese immigrants to this country are highly educated. And as a result, I think some of the local Caucasians start to get a different impression about Chinese, that somehow they all have good jobs, driving great cars and so on and so forth. But what they need to understand is the reason that America encourages talent from all over the world to immigrate to this country to contribute to the development of this country. And both the Chinese and the Indian from Asia, Indian subcontinent, took advantage of the immigration law, and large number of very capable, highly educated immigrants came to this country, and this country welcomes them. But that gives you a somewhat distorted opinion of the Chinese or Indian race and so forth. Actually, we are not that different from the rest of the world. We have our highly educated, but we also have not well educated, very poor citizens who most Americans don't have a chance to see unless you travel to China. So that's just the point I want to make.
Thank you, Larry. So we have a question. Do most Chinese Americans plan on remaining in Lexington beyond their children's schooling, or is there a desire to return to China? Someone like to answer that question?
So the answer is no. I think most Chinese here, American here, at least in Lexington, are going to stay here forever. Right? No, we're not planning to go back to China. We don't even have any like a Chinese passport or anymore. Most of us are American citizen, and we are here. We are part of this country.
Yeah, I like to second that, because I think, I think statistic I heard this is several years ago, about 70% of the Chinese, particularly Chinese students who studied here, remains in this country. And even nowadays, after they get their parents over, they choose to study. Even the children may have gone back to China because of better opportunity, because the benefit for seniors in America is really tremendous. Nothing that other countries of the world can compare. So I've seen examples, anecdotally, at least. The children have gone back to China for some better jobs, but the parents actually remain to stay here because of the senior benefits in this country.
And in my time, that's 1950s, 60s. If you go back to Taiwan, I came from Taiwan. If you go back to Taiwan, people might consider you failed. You could not stay or find a job in the United States. Now things are different. China is such a big industrious country, rich country now. So what I said doesn't apply anymore. But I still think personally, like Xu Jie said, we're here to stay and we love Lexington. We're not even leaving Lexington to go to live closer to our children, because Lexington is home to both of us.
Thank you. Let's see what other questions we have.
So let me ask the first question in the chat. I think there is the question is, how long have Chinese people been around? So this is from Moore in the audience. How long?
So what does it mean? How long in Lexington, or how long Chinese history, or in America?
Chinese, let's go for Chinese history.
5,000 years, right? Is it?
Yeah, that's not what you want to ask. No, I thought you meant how long have the Chinese immigrated to the United States.
Oh, okay. So that can trace back to the transcontinental
That's right.
railway, right?
It's as far as I know. Before that, I don't know.
Yeah, in fact, there was this famous picture when the Transcontinental Railroad was joined at, I think it's Provo, Utah or something. There was a ceremony. A golden spike was nailed into the rail. And all the Chinese at that time, the Chinese labor who worked on the railroad, make the connection, was excluded from this picture.
Yeah, I know that. Not a single Chinese in that picture. Yeah.
In the picture, yeah, even though thousands and maybe 100,000 worked on the railroad, but that was only rectified, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. There was another ceremony which to honor the Chinese labor who worked on the railroad.
And dear Monorail gave us an excellent answer. So in the chat, she said it's in the 1850s.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the next question. What are good ways to start talking to our children about stereotypes, particularly as Asian Americans who themselves may feel disconnected from their parents' heritage?
I think they have more resource than us. They have more experience than us. I don't need to discuss with them. I will let them to figure out by themselves.
Go ahead.
No, any ideas from our young high school kids to answer your question? How do they feel? They want to be.
For me, definitely, I think when I first came to the US, I wasn't fluent in English, and I was really embarrassed about speaking Chinese, and also just like the red that we had to wear like on our like zodiac year. And so I think it's just like building like this pride that we are proud, like we're proud to be ourselves, and I think everyone should be. And this like self-confidence that should be encouraged in the family, I think would help me a lot, at least. And yeah, and definitely I think from the education too, and people that you surround yourself with.
Thank you, Phoebe.
I would like to answer this question too. I totally agree with Phoebe. So what Phoebe said, it is what I'm doing at home. First, set a role model, and I'm so proud of my culture. And then I love reading. I read so many books, and I read books in Chinese and also in English. I figure out there's many Asian Chinese books, and the Western books, they are talking about the same thing, just in different language. But basically, they are talking about the same principle. And we went back to China basically once every year, stay there for 1 month or 2 months. We travel all over China. And I have 2 kids, 7-year-old and a 9-year-old. They see everything, not everything. They see, we travel to different cities. They learn the Chinese culture and they build that confidence. They are so proud to speak Chinese and share their experience with their friends. They are so proud. They feel like they are Americans, but my parents are from China. And I went back to China, and my grandparents live in China. There's so many great stuff about China, so they are eager to share. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Alina. So it's 8:09. I'd like to pose the final question to our panel. What steps can be taken to build a stronger relationship between the African Americans and Asian Americans in Lexington?
I would like to answer that. When we first moved here, there were few of us Chinese and there are few Black. Lois Martin was my friend. She's Black. We work together. I think the communication, when you're afraid of something, it's because you don't understand them. You don't know about them. But once you find out, they're just like you, except the skin, the look. We think alike. We work together. Now she belongs to American A.A.L, American Black citizen of Lexington. And we work together. And especially I belong to Martin Luther King Day of Service Committee. And we do work with the A.B.C.L to understand, trying to understand them. Then you find we're all the same. And it's communication. If you don't understand, misunderstanding, then there's a problem. And we want to work together, whether you're Black, purple, or red, doesn't matter.
Thank you.
In principle, we're the same.
Yes, exactly. So if there are no more questions, I'd like to thank Wei for moderating our program and all of our panelists for taking the time to be with us tonight to share your experiences. We hope this conversation provides some perspective of being Asian American. We hope it inspires viewers to continue their own educational journey and be better allies to everyone in their community. We have some book recommendations on the library's website. Feel free to browse them and do some reading. I'm going to put a link into our chat. Please comment on our program this evening and let us know what you thought. And there will also be a link to the book recommendations. Thank you all for joining us this evening and have a good night.
Thank you, Helen.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ding Wei.
Thank you, Sophia.
Thank you, Helen.
Today.
Thank you, Wei.
You are